Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back with you to talk about The Amazing Race 35, episode 9. We're down to the final 5 after this week's Amazing Race as we went through some caves and some rowing some boats around, and we used our muscles as we got through a very exciting leg of The Amazing Race. Back with us, a woman who can maybe settle. Is The Amazing Race harder than childbirth? Here is our chief Amazing Race correspondent, Jessica Liese. Jess, how are you?
I'm great, Rob, but I can't settle that because I had all the drugs ever.
Oh, I think you're going to say because you haven't been on The Amazing Race.
Well, that too.
Yes. Okay. Jess, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right, Rob. I'm excited to talk about all of this. I was very excited to get a shout out to the New York Times crossword app because I feel seen about the anxiety about keeping your streak alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Well, for Greg and John, I mean, we are really going streaking, right? Are we? Have we made history this week?
This is not
No.
history,
Not history. Okay.
but it's
This is
good.
very good. Very good. Okay.
Usually when you talk about like the most something ever, Dave and Rachel is usually the answer. I would imagine Dave and Rachel probably did like 5 in a row. Maybe another team did as well.
Okay, well, let me also introduce our great friend, my buoy, Mike Bloom.
It's your boy. Yes, excited to be here. I'm glad I'm not replaced, despite the fact that I'm just teaming with muscles down below, and excited to be talking to a couple of stalactites and the two of you before this Thanksgiving holiday.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving to both of you and everybody out there as we can be thankful for a very fun episode of The Amazing Race this week. At least I thought.
What'd you think, Jess?
Yeah, it was good. It was entertaining. It
Mhm.
was I think that the key to this being a great episode for me. Well, I don't know. I'm not allowed to say things are amazing anymore, but I thought it was really fun.
Well, can you give the context on that?
Yeah, the context on that is 2 weeks ago, I said that I thought the episode was an all-timer, and people got big mad when they watched it and they liked it less than I did. So that's what I'm referring to here. I think we are on a roll, though. We are on a streak ourselves. This is a third great episode in a row. And the key for this being entertaining for me is that you didn't just have one team's horrible mistake knock them out of the race. Certainly that happened, but you had two other teams make a whole series of horrible mistakes as well, so that it could have been any one of them at the end of the day. Even if it was going to be the team that was out, you really had two other teams that should be thanking their lucky stars because they dodged bullet here.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit of a step back for me, at least from the previous 2 weeks. Not a huge step, but maybe like a couple of paces, like Rob and Corey running up the hill behind Steve and Annalie. I was grateful to see, as always with The Amazing Race, a lot of variance, a lot of shaking up places to see two teams jump to the front, while to your point, Jess, two teams fall back. The Robin and Chelsea elimination, I mean, it's sad. They talked about being so distinctly different from the other teams that ended up playing out here because they were the only ones to really make as big of a mistakes in a couple of areas as the other teams. But I did feel like, yes, it had tinges of the Andrea and Milena. One team just gets so far behind that they can't catch up. But the Andrea and Milena one honestly was like pretty funny with just how bad of a mistake they made. Here, it wasn't funny as much as it was just like kind of sad by the end of it, of like, okay, well, definitely with two more teams out of the fray between now and then, they cannot catch up whatsoever. And maybe I thought history will repeat itself, but after Steve and Annalie were able to nearly do the impossible last leg, I did not think lightning would strike twice.
Here's a question for you, Mike. Do you think having two teams make essentially the same mistake in legs so close to one another kind of diminishes the impact of what happened this week? Like, we just saw a team do it. So, in a vacuum, we might have liked this better, but we just saw this happen.
It did feel a bit like a rerun. Yeah. And this is airing, the day before Thanksgiving, where back in the day, the CBS reality shows used to show clip shows. It was interesting to see, like, again, it was not nearly as catastrophic as that, but still certainly felt the same in terms of the structure of the episode, to the point where Robin and Chelsea don't see anybody from the time they miss that cave turnoff for the rest of the leg. And even then, you're eagle-eyed watching, okay, maybe there's a chance they'll catch up, but barring any sort of Morgan and Lena navigational difficulties from Todd and Ashley, it was near impossible.
I don't know why they don't make the Amazing Race as hard as possible, because I feel like that the harder they make it, the more teams screw up. And I feel like the thing that's almost always the thing that we talk about when it was a really good episode, it's a team makes like a horrific screw up in the Amazing Race. And I feel like that's always what we come back to. Like, oh, that was so good. Did you see how bad they screwed up?
Hot take, Rob. I think they probably do screw up that much, but it's like we need to have just the right amount of that in an episode, or we're just hating them all the time. We're just like dunking on them constantly. I think we get a lot of errors that people make, but I would say for every error we do see, there's probably several we don't because they're minor and uninteresting.
All right.
And
Well,
how much of this is a really hard task and they're just like doing the task, but it's hard. Like that's not a story either. That's not.
It just shows how much je ne sais quoi Andrea and Milena were, that they were able to make such debilitating errors so entertaining. And no offense to Robin and Chelsea, though it was very like entertainingly sad to watch poor Robin sitting there at the roadblock, just saying, any minute now, she's gonna come around that corner. She was waiting for Dad to come back with a pack of smokes after so many years, and eventually Chelsea ended up rounding the corner. But it was certainly after a longer time than she anticipated.
Well, Mike, you didn't think it was inspiring that they were sowing the seeds for their grandchildren to see their badass grandmas on The Amazing Race?
I mean, this brings a whole new meaning to gutsy grannies. I really, really love that. I mean, that was sort of the advantage we got with just okay, there's not even any sort of climactic element. Everything spelled out in front of us is that every time we cut back to Robin and Chelsea, like they were in their feels. They were trying to take everything in as much as possible. They talk throughout this leg about trying to have a better attitude. And I think for two people that came on with like a very concentrated goal, it's interesting. We'll all have the chance to talk with them on Monday because of the Thanksgiving holiday, but they sort of have done a lot of their own exit interview in this episode. I feel like with talking about like, yeah, we probably didn't have, the best chances of winning given the other two teams, them being very open about like trying to have a good head about the last leg of the race. It felt like maybe like an entire episode to conclude the arc that was Robin and Chelsea.
Yeah. Jess, any other thoughts about Robin and Chelsea as racers?
Well, Robin and Chelsea as racers, I thought, they won a leg. They were great. They were really good at what they did. And one of the things that I found a little bit annoying, and I don't think this is something they did as much as something the way that the show placed them. I feel like there was a more interesting story to how they interacted with the other teams that we didn't get to see, that we've heard bits and pieces of as we've talked to the other teams. But the storyline the show gives them is that they're the moms. And they're not even the only team left in the race at this point who has children that they have left at home. And yet I felt like for every time we heard one of the other parents on the race talk about their kids and how they miss them, we got like 5 clips of Robin and Chelsea. It was like all they talked about was their kids and being a mom. And how does this compare to being a mom? And it's like, there's more to them than that. And it felt almost a little sexist that the female team that left their minor children at home gets all of those sound bites. We didn't hear Joel and Garrett talking about how they miss their minor children that they've left at home with the other parent. And I think there was a better storyline that Robin and Chelsea could have gotten. Like, I would have loved the show to lean hard into the villain thing because that would have been really interesting. We only got a few pieces of that, and the pieces we got were great.
Yeah, I also think part of their story was also like some of the stuff, especially that Chelsea has overcome. I think that was a big part of their storyline. I wonder if they felt like that we can't go and portray them in like a negative light, considering that she's had loss and beat cancer and has been on through weight loss, and so maybe they felt like, okay, how can we turn this person into like a person who is kind of a negative on the show?
Yeah.
Counterpoint. Amazing Race Family Edition.
Yes,
Mike knows what I'm talking about.
There is a family who tragically lost their father. He was working on a racetrack and he had gotten hit while he was, in the middle of a race and had died. And they were the big villains of the season. That being said, the internet was a very different time between season 8 and season 35. So I get it. It's tough though, because it's not like they could necessarily like have to contrive a villain edit. To Jess's point, for what we've heard about them, there was stuff to work with. But I think, Rob, you make a very good point as to how they would maybe want to stray away from, granted, a very nuanced perspective as to like, yeah, listen, people can, go through a lot of hardships, then come onto the race and still have this like, whatever it takes, take any shortcut that you can get type of mentality to the rest of the team's chagrin. But it's a little more black and white when it comes to perhaps the fandom.
Okay, so how about Greg and John? This is, correct me if I'm wrong, fourth straight week of finishing in first place. They seem like that they are, getting even better at what they're doing. Can anybody catch Greg and John?
I assume somebody's going to catch Greg and John because I don't think they're getting a winner at it.
Oh, interesting. You think they were a little too under the radar in the first half of the race?
I think so. I think we don't have enough there. I mean, I think they are a lock for the finals, but
Mhm.
I don't see them taking the million.
Yeah, I would say I think that's a well-reasoned take. I don't know who the winner would be then, but I don't feel like that the Amazing Race is really shoving Greg and John down our throat so much as maybe if they were the winners. Jess, who do you think that the winners of the season are going to be?
I mean, I think there's a bigger story for Steve and Annalee, who kind
Mhm.
of arguably are the villains and certainly don't have any competition now. I think Steve and Annalee have had a great arc. We could see them
And bounce
taking
back
it.
very well this week.
Yeah.
Yep. I think Rob and Corey have been highly visible and a very interesting team with a great story that we would love to see take it home. And I also think Todd and Ashley have that sort of, mid Amazing Race couple that is the arguably the least interesting, but the most relatively consistent. And
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
think for many, many years, I would say I picked the most boring team. And I don't think Todd and Ashley are boring by any stretch, but they may be the most boring team left.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
would even say Joel and Garrett have a better story to win than Greg and John. We've seen a lot of them. We know a lot about them. And this type of team has never won. So it would be very exciting to see them pull it out.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I mean, I think I would like to say no, just because where's the fun in that? Where's the fun? I mean, I guess there is some fun in like the current record is 5. I looked it up. I believe actually Justin and Diana hold the record for 5 first place finishes in a row.
Yeah,
And if
also didn't win.
Yeah, but if John and Greg end up getting to like 6 or 7, that would be fun. But are we looking at a show that, again, we like when teams finish in different positions every week? And it's just like, okay, what will everyone else besides Greg and John rank in this week? That might lead to a more rote outcome. What I would imagine happens is, Rob, to go back to your question, can anyone catch Greg and John? I'll say, yeah, where it matters in the final leg. You quote Justin and Diana, that we have seen this a good amount, that the most dominant teams that have won, Colin and Christie 1.0 won like 9 legs of the Amazing Race 5 or something like that and still finished in second place. And so I could easily see Greg and John have not even a bad day, but a worse day than their usual thing. I agree that there doesn't seem to be really any Achilles heel for them yet. Whereas every other team in this season did that. Even when they fell behind in Vietnam, it was not really their own fault. But it comes for everyone eventually. There are only so many teams that can run such a perfect season of the Amazing Race. And so I have to imagine we'll regress to the mean a tad.
Yeah, I mean, they would hardly be the first time a team went out due to something that wasn't their fault.
All right. Well, let's talk about this second part of our trip through Slovenia this week and go through the tasks that the teams participated in. And we started off with a roadblock. They made a really big deal, like, oh, no Euros this week. Jess, is that very atypical? Like they made it seem like, uh-oh, how are the teams going to get by with no Euros?
Well, we had like 10 seasons in a row where we never knew how much money they had. I And they have not had it be a storyline that a team runs out of money and gets in trouble because of it in many seasons, because I think they realize that can have some kind of icky class implications here. It's like you're making this multi-million-dollar TV show, and then you're going to have the teams quibbling with locals over paying them for the services rendered.
Mm-hmm.
So they've kind of shied away from that. And I think at this point, I think it's just interesting trivia. It's interesting that we're getting it back sometimes, but also they didn't need to spend money on anything this leg. They were driving themselves. They were walking. If they wanted a snack, I think they probably had some money banked, but...
What about gas? Do they have to stop and buy gas ever?
I think they get a card for gas.
Yeah, well, I know certainly that was Amazing Race Canada had a number of seasons that did that, back when the gas station was the sponsor of the show.
Yeah, you could win free gas for life as part of your prize, too.
Wow.
Yeah, I believe they do get... I think they do get something for gas. It could be that they can use the same card they use for flights.
I was going to say, yeah, probably like the same generic card that they use to buy flights as well. Anything that seems like exorbitant. But yeah, we haven't really dealt with a lack of funds for a while. I think the only real way people end up super destitute on The Amazing Race is like if they end up dropping a bunch of money, or like James and Abba style, if money happens to fall out of their pack and another team picks it up.
Okay. Well, we started out with a roadblock that involved carrying a bunch of wooden utensils, which on paper, not that exciting, but probably what did in Robin and Chelsea.
I mean, it's like pick up a thing and take it to another thing is a classic Amazing Race task.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, though I think the most entertaining part of this task by far was watching everyone be forced to move in slow motion, because this thing, with no offense to the Slovenians, was kind of like built with a wing and a prayer, and it felt like it was going to fall apart at any moment's notice. So you had everyone just probably having their hearts pound more walking as slow as they can than as fast as they can, because they're just so aggravated that they can't run. And so you see everyone kind of moving in turtle motion, and it still doesn't help. I know what I was confused about was like, they said, oh, we don't want this to fall apart because we don't want to go back. I thought if something had fallen off, you have to go back, almost like crossing a balance beam. But no, it's pretty much like when you had to build the carts to transport yourself to the pit stop last season. Like, as long as you kept everything relatively together, no matter if it fell apart in transit, it just had to be in one piece when you got to the end.
Yeah, I think the rubric was just, did you bring all the pieces?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think you were allowed to, like, if you dropped that barrel thing, you weren't allowed to carry it in your hands the rest of the way. Like, it all had to be on your back. But I think people were very hung up on, does it look exactly like the one that was built? Because sometimes that is the thing. If I had to guess, I would say here's a point where we could have had a lot more people screwing up that we weren't shown, because I think we got, wherever somebody dropped something, it affected their placement.
Did I catch this right, that John asked somebody for directions of where he needed to go, and they told him that the place he was looking for was in Germany?
Yeah, what a freaking troll, that man. No wonder he didn't sign the NDA. And I love John just having to respond like, yep, I'll think about that. He's like, God damn it. I'm in the race for $1 million, and here are these freaking assholes out here in the middle of Slovenia being like, oh, really gonna get this guy today.
I mean, my guess is that the fountain might be called like German Fountain or something.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a German fountain that's very famous in Santiago, Chile. And if someone didn't know what it was and you showed them a picture of it, they'd be like, this says German Fountain. Are you sure this is not in Germany?
Yeah. Okay. Well, this was like shades of, what was that, a season or two ago with the Rams cheerleaders when they end up driving to the wrong country.
Oh, yeah. They didn't end up driving to the wrong country. They ended up not leaving this city. They ended up being told they were supposed to not, they were supposed to leave the city they were in, and they didn't have to.
Can we talk about the Limu Emu showing up in Slovenia?
Yes,
that was amazing.
Yes. I hope Omer was watching tonight.
Yeah, I really hope so as well. So random. I mean, let's be cards up here. Was the emu a plant? Do we think the seeds were planted that they're like, hey, bring out some random odds and ends onto this street that the Americans are going to be walking on? Or is that emu a constant staple near, what is it, Congress Square or wherever they went to?
I mean, Mike, you've been to Times Square. This is a smaller type of thing, but this is probably a major street traffic tourist thoroughfare. And that's where your street entertainers are. The emo is hardly the only entertainer we saw. Like, I think we need to take a moment to appreciate the guy with the ukulele and the deer mask.
Yes,
Mhm.
I
He would have
love
been the
that.
star if it
I
wasn't
was
for the
like,
emo.
oh my God, is Mike Bloom going to show up dressed like this guy?
Yeah, I actually was a task judge for this. I just rip off my mask. No, I was
Mhm.
actually one of the older women at the pit stop. That was my disguise for this episode.
Not
Yeah, and,
Maria that had
Yeah,
her
well, listen, I gave away the
beard on her
ghost when I
face.
rubbed Joel's beard on my face. Come on, that's the most full bloom thing you can do.
I
Fair.
mean, that was a wild moment in this episode.
That's the freakiest freak of the season. Has to be, right?
It's got some competition.
This woman
Mhm.
approaches this smelly ass sweaty man and is like,
Mhm.
ooh, what nice facial hair. Do you mind if I rub my own face upon it? Excuse me,
Mhm.
ma'am. You know what? You owe me euros for that. €0? No. I get 10 euros at the end of this leg because
Yeah.
this woman took my beard.
I hope Joel doesn't end up in the doghouse tonight when his wife watches this episode.
I think she's going to be more amused than anything else.
Okay.
The doghouse or
well.
the dragon house? Roar!
Is that a lion or a bear?
It's all the same generic noise.
Roar is a roar.
I mean, listen, between the likability, the beard, the roaring, I'm just saying,
Mhm.
Joel could be a Rupert 20 years later.
Mhm. Oh, I think you were citing the Amazing Race contestant, Rupert.
I mean, I guess that's true as well. No elephants. I wonder what the elephant sound that Joel would make is.
I wanted to hear his emu
Roar.
sound.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's just such an odd thing to have just randomly around the street. I mean, I guess maybe they serve as distractions for the racers as well. Speaking of Joel, though, really fun moment when Joel is getting directions and completely misses Corey slow walking past him. Like, how in the weeds must you be that you don't have any peripheral vision to not only notice a guy in crimson red, but someone carrying one of these objects on his back, walking at the speed of a turtle by
Mhm.
you?
Yeah, and Corey's reaction to this is also pretty great. He's just like, I'm going to keep moving quietly. Hope he doesn't see me. Like,
I don't know him.
Mhm.
Yep. Totally unrelated wooden utensil task.
All right. So the big problem here for Robin was that she lost a rolling pin and couldn't figure out what the issue was. That she ultimately finds the rolling pin, but then does she take a whole new set of utensils, a whole new like backpack, back to the mat?
No, you see her putting it back on the same backpack.
Mhm.
So I don't know. Maybe if you wreck that thing considerably in transit, like I would maybe want to transition everything around there just so I don't have to carry shambles on my back.
It might
Mhm.
move some stuff around, but I think it had to be the same one because you picked up that backpack at one place with all the stuff and then you had
Mhm.
to assemble it.
Yeah.
So I think it had to be the same one. You couldn't like go back to the starting point and get another one.
Do you think Robin has any sort of thing about rolling pins now where it's like this week somebody's asking her to like, okay, Robin, you're gonna make the pie. It's like, not touching a rolling pin ever again. Forget it.
Yeah, rolling pins are for suckers. Get the store-bought dough.
Either that, or maybe she has like a rolling pin on her keychain now, just like carabiner to her, so she'll never miss it at any point in time
Mhm.
because they're moms.
Yeah, that's a thing. It's a
Just
thing
was
that
this a
moms
five
have.
hole? Yeah.
No, the 5-hole would be you had to pick up a bunch of children in a van and take them to soccer
Mhm.
practice.
Okay.
That would technically be kidnapping. I don't know if I'd like that as an Amazing Race task.
Okay. All right. So then the teams would have to go to do another task. They'd have to go to this cave, and the teams all seem to think that there was going to be something to do with stalagmites and stalactites. It's like, okay, if that comes up, we're ready.
Could those have been the 2 detour options?
Hmm. That would be great.
If I want to know what those detours would entail.
I mean, one would be like rappelling down from the ceiling, and one would be like, I don't know, making your way on foot somewhere. Could be
Building
very fun.
something from the ground up.
Yeah, and it could be the rare detour where they get it wrong because they don't know the mnemonic, and so they're like, "Crap, we thought this was stalactite. This is stalagmite. I guess we're doing this one."
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
at least like Chelsea and Robin couldn't even pronounce stalagmites, so you have a leg up if you know how to say it.
Well, everybody's going to head to the cave, but there will be some more issues with getting there. And we saw where Todd and Ashley have some more trouble, and we hear about Todd's dad detours.
I thought this meant he held Amazing Race, legs with his own family, and he just was the designer of all the detours every leg.
Knowing Todd, I would believe that. I want to back up and mention one more thing about the roadblock, because we frequently referred to Garrett's alter ego Smythe, and this week was a rare appearance of Joel's alter ego. You hear Garrett call him Strasser.
Okay.
Strasser and Smythe, honestly, sounds like a TNT show in the making.
It's a legal drama, clearly.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What do they do?
They sue people who fondle other men's beards. It's a very niche show, but for some reason it's pulling really well in like Iowa, Ohio.
All right. Well, they're working hard for you at Smythe and Strasser.
But yeah, these caves, I will also say, maybe one of my favorite places we have been to in a while on Amazing Race. Just like absolutely gorgeous, nearly one of a kind. We very rarely go subterranean, especially in modern day Amazing Race. I mean, infamously, we had the Mine 5, but I feel like outside of that, we don't necessarily go in that area. And it was just gorgeous. I'm so happy we had a task in there so that we could just spend more time in that location.
Well, we had the Penn Holderness mail train too.
Oh, yes, of course.
Yes. Even more so than just like being in the cave, like going down and down into the cave. Like I thought that was really cool.
It was beautiful. And you can tell, like, this is just one cave. This is not like the most spectacular tourist attraction in all of Slovenia. This is just like a cave. There's a whole bunch of them, as we see when Chelsea and Robin go to the wrong Jama and they realize they have to turn around and go back. It's just like, this is like a lot of Europe. It's like you see this amazing, spectacular thing. And it's like, oh no, there are 12 of them. This is just one of them.
We're not going camping. We're on the Amazing Race.
All right. Well, we end up going into the caves, and the teams have to build this dragon. Of course, a lot of dragon talk in Slovenia. Mike, did you like the dragon?
Well, it's not that I like the dragon. I loved the dragon keeper. Where did they find this man? First off, he's basically just Nandor from What We Do in the Shadows. And I was just obsessed with the lore that, like, is this something out of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade where, like, this man has been kept here forever until someone assembled the dragon puzzle? And then also his comments to when they succeeded and failed in the puzzles were really spectacular.
No, I have my own, like, headcanon about the Dragon Keeper.
Please.
I think this is his day job. I think he goes home to, like, a wife and kids. And I think you have to build the dragons. He keeps multiple dragons down here, but, like, instead of hatching them from an egg, you have to build them from a puzzle, and then they come to life and they fly off, as evidenced by his quote to John and Greg, where he says, "This dragon will never fly."
Yes. Father of dragons.
Yes.
And
he really is like the exact opposite of Daenerys Targaryen, right? He has the long black hair.
But the corollary of, okay, this dragon will never fly, you would think he would be like, wow, this dragon will soar now. He says, nope. Your work here is done.
Yeah.
Your job down here is done.
Yeah,
your job down here is done.
Yeah.
Well, even he's like, listen, I know the laws of physics, even down here. I know this thing can't fly. It's made of balsa wood. We can't toss it into a cavern. So you're good. Okay, here's your clue.
Yeah, well, they don't have the budget to, like, put it up on a rig and, like, let it, like, soar up to the ceiling.
I imagine, like, a winch just like boop, boop, boop as it soars through the air.
Yep, yeet.
But what's the backstory on this? Why are we in a cave putting together these specific dragons? Is this an activity that you do in Slovenia?
Phil explained it.
Yeah, this is where the dragons came from.
This is where they live, in the caves.
The dragons live in the caves, and so that's why you have to build them there.
But they had a hard time, like, wrangling real ones for the task. There's nothing safe they could do with the real dragons.
Well, it's tough because this filmed during a strike, and so all the dragons, of course, are SAG-AFTRA, and so they're like, they can't do it. You know, poor Caraxes.
Drag-AFTRA.
But what I adored about this is that this is maybe the 90s kid in me. There was these like wooden dinosaur puzzles that you would put together where you'd form like the skeleton of a dinosaur using little wooden pieces that you would slot into each other. And I know we kept saying IKEA furniture, but this was basically a giant version of that. And so I felt very much at home.
This has been in the Amazing Race before, at least twice that I can think of.
I was thinking season 14, right? Or was it 18 they had to put together a giant dinosaur?
I remember Gary and Mallory doing it.
Yeah, so it might have been 18.
Express pass on it. Might have been 18.
Yeah, so I definitely remember, because I think I remember Jamie and Cara doing one, so I was remembering if it was 14 or 18.
Sure. And I think Amazing Race Canada might have even done it as recently as last season.
Yeah, the teams are going to be putting together their dragons, and some will be having more trouble than others. We hear that, Rob and Corey, that Rob, I believe, is the expert on IKEA furniture. So
Rob is the expert on everything. He's a good swimmer. He knows NATO. He can put together IKEA furniture with no instructions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not kicking a soccer ball.
But he's good at darts. He's good at darts.
He's good at darts. Yeah. But when the teams were doing it, I think Steve said of the dragons, he said, that's as cool as a beehive.
Well, I think he was talking about putting together the beehive last episode.
Ah.
Yeah, I don't think it's just some sort of southern phrase.
I thought that was like an interesting
expression. That's cool to be on.
Yeah. For Steve and Annalie, I thought they also had a good moment earlier in the episode. I was like, I think they're going home, because Steve was talking about how Annalie, he's, basically he's racing with his like big daughter now. And so I was like, that's it. Steve and Annalie, they're toast.
Yeah, because these confessionals are always done at the end of a leg after the teams had check in. And I agree. The tone in that moment was very much pointed at like, well, this is the end, and Steve's getting emotional, and Annalie's getting emotional because Steve's getting emotional. Though that also hinted to me that any modicum of Todd and Ashley going was out the window, because Todd was like so energetically talking about the 2 Chainz moment that we'll get into later, that like, if that was the thing that eliminated him from $1 million after they were doing so well, he would not be nearly as happy about it.
I don't know. He's kind of like the Andy Dwyer of the race. He's just like happy about everything. I feel like he's going to still be happy.
Kelsey.
Yeah, he's going to be.
Ashley taught me so many things, but not how to drive.
He's just going to be happy at the end of whatever happens. Like I think the easier tell for Todd and Ashley is we're going to look at Ashley, because she has no poker face whatsoever.
All right, let's talk about. Go ahead.
I did want to. I think Joel and Garrett also invoked the beehives as like, we put those together, we're going to be good at this as well, which was a little bit more on the nose.
Yeah,
and I think Steve and Annalie, I didn't get an elimination vibe from what they were saying, because I think it was more just they pulled it back together after their disastrous leg. And you saw them, like, as soon as they kind of pulled it up to the front of the pack, it was like they were functional again. Their relationship was goals again.
Let's start to talk about the detour in this episode, which Robin and Chelsea are like, wow, we had a lot of tasks. We haven't even had a detour yet. Is there a detour on every leg of the Amazing Race?
Like, there hasn't even been a detour on every leg of this Amazing Race, dude.
All right, so we've got scrape off or swap out.
Yeah, I like that they were both related to one another. You could have switched easily, and
both hard though.
So many ways to screw this up.
Well, that's the thing. I don't know. Maybe I was just like not paying attention as much when Phil was describing the buoy side of the detour. But when John's like, "Oh, it's a needle in a haystack," I'm like, "Wait, a what? And a what now? How is that the case?" And then we saw the rows upon rows. Talk about planting seeds of buoys. It's like, oh, okay. But then I don't know. Was it though? Because weren't John and Greg like? It's not like they have to pull up every buoy. That's what I initially thought. You had to just look for the red and yellow one.
Yeah, and they were yellow buoys. I think the red was hard to spot because they all had like a red dot on them. And you just had to figure out how they were marked, which I think was the hard part. But boy, Rob and Corey didn't read their clue at all.
Yeah, where did this come from? Because it's not like they were super far behind, so they were floundering for whatever reason. They basically only read the first half of the roadblock and said, okay, yada, 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 we get it. Let's do it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and then they screwed it up in like the way that was the hardest to come back from. And this honestly, because I couldn't tell, like, were they just exhibiting poor judgment, or was it an actual rule that once you took a buoy, you had to keep going for that buoy, and you couldn't like just say, scrap it and find a different pair of buoys.
Yeah, I was curious about that as well, because I guess the benefit is, okay, well, at least we know where this one is. The con is they obviously did not know where this one was, that they were not able to
Mhm.
retrace their steps in the havoc of figuring out that they screwed up and were like, oh crap, let's just go back to that destination. Because I can imagine if they're like, well, we know where this one is at least. We'll look for the place where a buoy should be and we'll go down there. But it was very clear that they just got turned head over tails and decided, okay, this isn't worth it. Let's swap. Did they just think that the task was to bring in 2 buoys? I'm not the most nautically minded, but I feel like that's not what people do on the reg in the
Yeah,
water.
because they
I mean,
didn't
the
even bring
buoy.
in the replacements that they needed
No.
to swap them out with.
Yeah, maybe they interpreted it as like you just have to go get a buoy and then get your buoy and put it there. But still, it's like
Mhm.
that doesn't make any sense either, because you should just take your buoy and like swap them in real time instead of kayaking all the way back to the pier.
I mean, it was wild to watch Rob actually get out of the kayak and dive down. When we saw this on the next time on last week, I was like, "Oh, is there a diving challenge happening? You know, a la the golden coins in The Amazing Race 31." Nope. They just had to audible a bit because Rob had to get out of the kayak to actually look for where they left their muscles.
Mhm. Jess, is it just me, or was Phil really in his bag with both sides of this detour being very much tough as nails challenges?
I think he was, but I felt like the ADR on Phil was a little bit off this week.
Hmm.
And like naturally I don't watch the show at 1.0 speed anymore, but it felt like it was weirdly chopped together. And at some points it sounded like he was recording the audio in a different place.
Hmm.
And it was almost like maybe they fed his voice print to an AI and just had the voiceovers done that way. Um,
Eventually.
it felt off. There was something a little uncanny valley about what Phil was doing this week.
I don't know. Maybe he was replaced, at least when it comes to writing the dialogue, because did you notice? We'll cut to the teams later on, but what he said to Greg and John upon them winning the leg, it was one of the strangest things I've heard Phil say. Definitely up there with Joel and Garrett's like, ah, well, you had a chance to go to a brand new country and you will still get that chance. They finish and he goes, you will each earn $5,000 and it's not going to the second place team. It's going to team number 1, and that's you.
It was very purred happily, wasn't it? Like, not to invoke Parks and Rec for the second time in 5 minutes, but on the other hand, I feel like trying and failing to mess with the teams in an
Mhm.
awkward way is very on brand for Phil.
But like, why do you start with the money then? Why? No on earth would they say, oh yes, there's a consolation prize. I forgot about that. The second place team does get $10,000 for this
Pretty
thing.
good
Yeah.
money.
First
Good
place
money for
team got
second place.
20,000. Guess what?
Yeah, listen, the reason why you didn't get any money to begin is because you're ending with all the money. You each are getting a cash prize.
Jess, I want to talk about the makeup of these two tasks because we saw most of these teams end up going to go and pick the swap out, but while scrape off seemed harder, it seemed like that there were less ways you could screw it up.
Yeah, well, this is always the dilemma. It's like, do you take this one that is physically taxing, but you are almost guaranteed to do correctly the first time?
Mhm.
Or do you take the one where you could plausibly screw it up a lot of ways, but if you do it correctly, it's going to take you a lot less time? It's a gamble.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, again, it's very nice to have these two right next to each other because even if you make a catastrophic error like Robin Curry or even Todd and Ashley to a certain extent, it's not about, okay, now we have to, like we saw with the massage parlor, take all this time to go travel to the other thing. Now it's just like, okay, well, we can literally just paddle over to the other side of the detour. Make sure we grab our necessary props because apparently a third of the teams didn't know how to do that and move on from there.
Mhm. For Greg and John, who were able to really ace the swap out challenge, they're so good in the water in terms of like working that kayak. I
They're
mean,
lake people.
yeah, I mean, it's incredible. I mean, they were like effortless through the water.
Yeah, they were very funny also this week. I felt like this is probably as funny as they always are. We just don't see as much of that as we really could be.
Sun's out, guns out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I've heard Mike Bloom say that same quote.
Oh yeah, and listen, I'm a regular artillery when summertime comes around.
I was very concerned at you had many opportunities to wear something to this podcast, and instead you're cosplaying as Rob. So
Yeah, well, listen, it was
Yeah, well,
decision paralysis. I had many. It was a multi-headed detour, and I was like, "There's just so many good ones. I can't possibly do it. So let me just honor the man himself, the man who
Thank you,
planted the
Mike.
seeds for me to grow."
Yes.
I wish
yes.
I wish I had Omer's emu t-shirt. I feel like that was the play
Oh yeah.
when I'm not getting the memo that it's Buffalo Plaid Day.
We did not coordinate this, Jess.
No.
Sure you didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I can see where I'm not wanted.
Next week we'll do
All right,
it.
next week.
Okay.
Week.
All right. Anything else about the detour?
I mean, I just thought it was nice to have like such a landscape discrepancy going from the caves to the water. I think was a nice display. I mean, I will say overall through these two legs, really nice introduction to Slovenia. I feel like this country contains so many cool things in it, and I feel like we have had some other countries make their debut in Amazing Race in the past few seasons. I can't think of one that had nearly as much of an impact in my mind from like a tourism perspective as Slovenia did here.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm the one who cares about travel on this podcast. Slovenia has always been on my short list of places I want to visit, but I am excited to see that it surpasses my expectations. Like, it just looks like a cool place to visit, and I would very much like to get there at some point.
Okay. Todd and Ashley, they were one of the teams that was also struggling to get to the detour. They also showed up and kind of got things screwed up, needed to go change the detour, but that didn't stop Todd from having fun.
To Ashley's chagrin, I love this so much that in a race, again, and maybe it was a little compartmentalized by the fact that Robin and Chelsea were, again, so far behind. Yes, there's a chance that maybe you got so lost they passed you, but Todd was like trying to live it up a little bit. Him bellowing to the wind that he found the chains and him trying to make a 2 Chainz reference 10 years probably after he's been actually relevant in the pop culture stream. It's so great, and it's even more done by the fact that Ashley wants nothing to do with it. She's like, please get over this nonsense, my stupid husband. Get in the freaking kayak. Let's keep racing.
Yeah. Honestly, if this was their last week, this was a great note to go out on. I really got that vibe of, we can't control what happens now. We just have to do the tasks and enjoy our time left. And you see it at the end when they get to the mat. They're like, we're pretty sure we're fifth, but there's this possibility that we are in dead last, so we can't discount it, and we're gonna project this sense of retroactively we've enjoyed the experience.
Yeah, Todd was really trying to make the best of it, but Ashley really was very over whatever he was doing.
I mean, this probably was the biggest. It's tough because Joel described the putting together the dragon as like dad activities, but Todd, I think, represented the most dad out of everyone in this episode, between the dad detours, him making like dad jokes and being kind of a buffoon. It felt like he embodied that aspect the most, and I do feel like this is the episode that maybe gave us the biggest introspection into their relationship, where like it's not toxic bickering, but it's still bickering nonetheless, and you get a big dynamic as to like Todd's the big fun dad, and not to say that Ashley isn't fun, but I think she is someone that is more concentrated on like the actual matter at hand and getting things done.
Yeah, I know which parent is the fun parent in that household. Like, I know if I want to go hang out with my friends at the mall, I know which parent I'm asking if I can go.
Yeah.
Don't, you can leave, just don't forget your 2 Chainz on the way out.
I don't think I get to be either the fun parent or the person who's more in charge of the matter at hand.
I mean, if you ask my husband,
Mm-hmm.
and if you ask me, I am not the fun parent.
Mhm.
But then if
Mhm.
you ask George thinks I'm the fun parent.
Yeah.
I mean, do I have to say anything? We can all assume what my dynamic is, right?
Yeah,
You've seen my wife's Instagram.
I know your
Mhm.
wife, Mike.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Like, we are a much shorter version of Todd and Ashley in a nutshell.
Mhm. Okay, well, for Steve and Annalie, they were one of the teams that they went directly to the scrape it off, and they nailed it. Such a
They
bounce back
scraped it.
week for Steve and Annalie.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it didn't seem. I guess we had like some people
They
complaining
didn't have to
about their
scrape
back.
by this week.
Exactly. It didn't seem that incredibly physical, and it didn't seem like it really bogged a lot of teams down.
Mike, what are you talking about? That Ashley is going to have muscles like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We haven't been referencing that since 2017 on this podcast.
Todd, look at you with your muscles. We're gonna get you back playing athletics once again, Todd.
Not like my nephew, the ne'er
Mhm.
do well. Was not the thing on Celebrity Apprentice? Like, did Arnold Schwarzenegger
My
always make fun
nephew
of his nephew?
Patrick.
Yeah, he
Yes.
always made fun of his nephew, Patrick Schwarzenegger.
We're here in Slovenia, such a tiny little country, not as powerful as Austria.
But it's right there. You're at the pit stop. My house is over there. Hello, mother.
Please say hello to my mother, Maria. She loves beards.
But not the other Maria. It's
Yeah.
complicated there.
Yes.
It's the ultimate Freudian slip.
Yeah. I just want to say I would not have chosen the chain scraping thing just because it did look like it was going to be a murder on your back. I think Todd and
Mhm.
Ashley had the right strategy where they sort of sat down on the thing
Yeah.
and sort of scooted around, scraping it. Probably took a little longer, but I bet it hurt a lot less.
Mhm.
Now, the
Yeah.
question is, they obviously scout out these locations to do these tasks. Were they like, hey, can you save up 6 rings full of barnacles? Just don't do the usual maintenance on it. We'll have our Americans come in and do it later.
Mhm.
I'm sure they have to go in and like do cleanup on it.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah. They did not get nearly all those barnacles off.
Yeah. I mean, how do they do this kind of stuff for Tough as Nails, Mike?
Yeah, but they're not doing actual things on top
Phil's
of
on the
nails.
message boards with anybody that needs manual labor done around the world.
Anyone need their house painted?
Well, I think Phil's been pretty clear that someone has to go in and clean up after all of their jobs too.
Yeah, exactly. Who wants an oven to get destroyed in the middle of their store?
Yeah. And then we start to get a little bit about Robin and Chelsea. They're way far behind, but they're having, sort of, the epiphany, just the teams that are going to be eliminated. They seem to have in their final moments on The Amazing Race. If only teams could have that epiphany earlier on in The Amazing Race and then enjoy the entire experience more.
Well, I think that epiphany is kind of coaxed out of them in the final confessional. And I think it's also like, while you're trying to compete, there's always a chance that you might be wrong about
Mhm.
losing. And so you have to focus on that. And we like it when people sort of have that epiphany 10 minutes early and we get those moments of like,
Mhm.
this is so beautiful. I'm so lucky to be here. But if someone did that for the entire race, I don't think they'd last very long.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think Stop and Smell the Roses doesn't work on a show called The Amazing Race.
Mhm. So we're down to just 5 teams now after this. And here we are. Okay. It's Thanksgiving week. It's only November 22nd. We're down to 5 teams. How many more weeks of The Amazing Race do we have? I feel like, are there 4 more weeks of The Amazing Race?
Well, it's tough, yeah, because we have to do 3 eliminations to get down from 5 to 3. But if we're...
You only have to do, if there's 5 teams left, Mike.
Oh, yeah, no, 3 legs, I mean. It's 5
Yeah.
to 4, 4 to
Mhm.
3, and then the final 3.
Yeah.
So, but people have been assuming that The Amazing Race would finish the week before Survivor ends, which would be on the 13th, which would be 12 episodes. So, yeah, there's a chance we can get another not mega leg happening. I would assume next episode, because I don't think they'd want to do it at the final 4. So that's a really good call, unless it's just finishing a week earlier than anticipated.
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to do that. I feel like it could be one of these things where I feel like haven't we seen that before? Where it's like the final four, and it's like, all right, well, keep racing, and then they are going to eliminate somebody in the
Oh,
finale.
actually, you
Yeah,
know what?
they've done
Sorry,
that.
I was doing the math wrong because this is episode 9. Yeah, we'll have 10, 11, and 12. So there are only 3 episodes left. No more mega legs. It should be elimination every time.
Okay, so that you think that there will be a week in between if Survivor's finale is going to be on the
20th.
20th. You think that we're going to end this Amazing Race season on December 6th?
Yeah, no, on the 13th. So it's going to
On the
be
okay,
so
got
okay,
it.
so next week is going to be the 29th, which is going to be going to where are they? They're going to Sweden.
Stockholm.
Yeah,
Yep.
they're going to Stockholm.
Legit, there is a midsummer
One.
challenge in there.
Oh, ooh, okay. Well, bring your flowers out. Then on December 6th is when we're going to do the penultimate leg, which I believe is going to take us to Ireland,
Mhm.
spoiler alert. And then the week after, the 13th, will be the finale where they go back to the US.
Okay, got it. All right. Is there anything else that we want to say about these 5 teams that are going to be headed into this home stretch of the Amazing Race?
I mean, let's take a little bit of a Thanksgiving break here. Do we want to make a prediction of who's going to make the final 3? There are always surprises that sneak in, but I feel
Mhm.
like a couple of teams are kind of locked in to make the finale at this point.
All right. Well, what are they, Mike?
I'm going to say Greg and John and Rob and Corey are going to be 2
Mhm.
out of the other 3 teams, barring any sort of like massive upset. And so it basically comes down to one spot between the other 3 teams.
And who you got?
That one's a little bit tougher because these 3 teams have all showed like strength on any given day. I'm going to go with I'll go with Todd and Ashley. I think they'll be able to bounce back.
Todd and
Maybe
Ashley are the team that gets to the top 3.
Yeah, maybe I'm sort of taking the next time on as too much at face value, but Steve and Annalie are yelling that it's a foot race, which seems to make me believe it'll be another like
Mhm.
fast-paced foot race. And I feel like the only people they could really beat would be Joel and Garrett. And I feel like Joel and Garrett have that big like 4th place fan favorite energy that we sometimes get on the Amazing Race proper. And so they also probably have less of a strong body of work than those other 3 teams.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mike. I think it's one of the 2 co-ed teams next week, and then it's Joel and Garrett, and then it's everybody else is in the finals.
Mhm. I still I'm a Steve and Annalie believer. I want to see them get to
Anna
the top
Lever.
3. Annalie her. Yeah. I mean, they've been so much fun to see, Annalie. I love her, and I want to see her go as far as possible. And I feel like that between Todd and Ashley and Joel and Garrett, I feel like I could see them being 4th and 5th, and then potentially with Steve and Annalie making it to the finals.
Though let's commend Joel and Garrett here. This is the highest they've ever placed in the race, making it all the way to 2nd place.
Hmm. They're
Yeah,
coming
and
on strong. They're heating up.
they're doing great, and I think
Hmm.
they've gotten a lot of an edit, but I think if tradition holds, they will be out right before the finals. I would love to see them in the finals. I think that makes it much more interesting if they're in the finals.
Just, do we know where we're headed next week?
Stockholm.
Okay.
We just said that.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Rob has Stockholm syndrome right now, being away.
Yes.
All
Yeah.
right, fair.
Okay. Have we been there before?
A couple of times,
Mhm.
actually. Yeah, there was I think it was season 6 where they had a whole challenge in an IKEA.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, it was a detour where they had to build IKEA furniture.
Hmm.
Yep.
Not
Or
dragons.
they had to either build IKEA furniture or count this giant bin of stuffed animals.
And that was infamously the hay bale roadblock as well, which I was
Yes.
surprised. This is an answer that maybe some of us had questions about, okay, when they have back-to-back self-driving legs, do they use the same car? And we saw Greg and John have to get back into their hay-filled car to drive from the roadblock. So yes, they do have to.
Okay.
Hilarious.
To all the people with hay fever and the allergies, very sad to hear that. All right.
Yeah, we already
Then-
had a hay task, so we're not getting a hay switchback next week, which is
Mhm.
disappointing.
Mhm. Okay. All right. Only 3 episodes left of the Amazing Race 35. Anything else Amazing Race before we start to wrap things up?
It's just wild that we're already less than a month away from the finale. But as we talked about last week, right now we're talking only like 3 months and change from when we do it all over again with the next season. So it won't be
Mhm.
that much of a pit stop between legs here.
All right. Jess, what else is coming up for you?
Well, this is the only thing I have going on right now.
Oh, you
It's
seem too
glorious.
happy about that.
Look, I never have to watch Fear the Walking Dead ever again.
Was it a bad finale?
I mean, wasn't a good finale.
Mhm.
Oh, okay.
It was because it's Fear the Walking Dead, and Fear the Walking Dead
Mhm.
is the opposite of fun and good, and it's over now.
Did they tie things up, or they just left it sort of like ambiguously open-ended?
They left it open-ended to give at least 8 different characters a spin-off should they decide they want to go that route.
Mhm. Or at least
And-
bring them into other things and say, "Oh,
Yeah.
this person's here. Uh-oh, you gotta watch this week."
Yeah, they kind of split everybody off and like sent them on their own journeys, and it's like any one of those people could wind up on the Daryl Dixon boat, and we are kind of
Mhm.
hoping
Ooh.
that doesn't happen.
Is that the new
Mhm.
spinoff of the spinoff, the Daryl Dixon boat?
Yeah, I think we're gonna have Jerry O'Connell host that.
Just that's how they keep everybody honest in the contract negotiations of like, all right, we've got a contract. We're gonna give it to somebody. One
I
of
think
your
I would like to
characters.
see. Okay,
In
I would
my
love to
hands,
see-
it's the contract of the next star.
Mhm. Nobody play hardball though, because we'll give it to somebody else.
Okay, now I want to see the competition reality show where all of the characters across The Walking Dead are going to get a chance to get brought back onto one of the existing spin-offs,
Mhm.
and they have to compete for it.
I like it.
That could be a Tales episode.
Yeah,
but- Anyway, you can catch our coverage of the finale on post-show recaps, and then we will be back in February for The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live, or as I am calling it, The Walking Dead Towel.
you're gonna need that when you stay on the Dixon boat.
Yeah. All right, Jess, great job. And happy Thanksgiving to you. Mike, what else is coming up for you?
Yeah, so as mentioned before, any CBS exit press for reality TV is being done on Monday due to the Thanksgiving holiday. So I'll be talking with not only Robin and Chelsea, but the most recent boot from Survivor as well. I'll be doing the B&B over the weekend with Allie and Lasher. Over on post-show recaps, believe it or not, new TV is still happening in the latter month of the year here in 2023. Fargo is back for the first
What?
time since the end of 2020. It's coming back with a pretty damn fun cast. John Hamm, Juno Temple, Joe Keery, Lamorne Morris. So I'm covering that with Grace Leader and LaTanya Starks. The first 2 episodes are up right now, actually, if people want to check it out. And we'll have coverage there going on every week.
All right. Mike, great job. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours. And thanks everybody for listening to our amazing race recap today. We're going to have exit press for the amazing race on Monday on the other side of the Thanksgiving holiday. So check out when Jess and I check in with Robin and Chelsea, and Mike's interview as well with Robin and Chelsea, plus all the Survivor exit press also will be that same day coming up on Cyber Monday.
Okay, there we go. Gives you an excuse to get online and not only make some deals, but listen to a nice chat with 2 really fun people as well. I love that as emotional as they got in their final moments. Chelsea still finishes it up with a very dry, deadpan line about how the only detour she wants to face right now is vacuuming the rug.
Okay,
Yeah,
we'll
hashtag
find out.
moms.
Moms be momming.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.